Well, my research revolves around data breaches, data breach disclosure laws, essentially different ways of preventing the harm, resulting privacy harms from these data breaches. And what I have studied in the past are both empirical work and theoretical work around the effects of the data breach disclosure laws. So for instance, do the data breach disclosure laws reduce identity theft? In some other work, we look at the mechanisms by which the disclosure laws can reduce identity theft and how social costs can be reduced because of these laws. I've also studied alternative policy mechanisms that can be introduced in order to reduce the externalities from data breaches. So for example, ex-ante safety regulation or mandated standards can be used to prevent the harm from ever taking place. On the other hand, ex-post liability regimes can be introduced to allow consumers to sue companies and recover loss. And then the information disclosure sits in the middle, essentially between those two, to empower consumers, or some may say to burden consumers with information. So it is very much a case, or often a concern or criticisms with the disclosure laws, is that you're providing information ostensibly for consumers to empower consumers to take action to mitigate the harms of identity theft, for example. And the issue often becomes, when they receive this disclosure, this notification, what is it they're supposed to do with it? How are they possibly supposed to understand the risks involved in some potential future harm? That can be very difficult for people. Often there are biases, cognitive biases, decision-making errors that they suffer from, or behaviors that they suffer from, which makes it very difficult for them to take meaningful action. Well, that's a great question. Why should consumers care about the laws? To the extent that they are harmed, you would think that they certainly do care. To the extent that they may suffer no harm, or that the expected harm may be so low, that's a fair question to ask. Why should they care? If there is harm that they're suffering that maybe they don't know about, that would seem to suggest that there's a role for a policymaker for legislation. Um, but but the question still seems to be, in a lot of cases, outstanding of where is the harm. Are we able to quantify that? That is very difficult and often not very well known.